We've had 122 events in 3 days, so I'm sure none of you are tired. I'm certainly not, so thank you for coming out. This Monday I asked you if I could come by and grab the annual deal flow report that ITC and Blake and Altaris Capital put together for the Capital Connect conference. And I've been meaning to ask you this question for 6 months, so here it is. How many years have you been putting that together? So that's the first part of the question. How many years is it?
So it has 6 years.
6 years. So at this point, you should be starting to see a lot of really great data points on deal flow and growth. What can you share with all of us about what you've been seeing over the last 6 years by putting that together?
What happened is that you'll see that technology is a major driver of the money that comes into Idaho. So on the last one, for instance, there were about $2.4 billion that was raised by Idaho companies. And in that $2.4 billion, 61% of that was in technology or a software space. So I think a lot of what that means is that a lot of people are raising money, but it also means that a lot of companies are looking to invest in companies that are finding solutions. So let's call them computing technology, so data, big other type of things about how you can take a product to market, Internet of Things, all of these type of things. So that's what we're finding. The other data point that you're going to be really interested in is that there was a major discussion we had about in 2010, right after the financial collapse. And in that, Mark Sullen and a couple of people kind of got into this thing about that there really wasn't money coming to Idaho. And a lot of it had to be because it was a chicken and egg syndrome. There wasn't the enough really good ideas that were being generated out of Idaho. This deal flow report shows that there are wonderful ideas, and there are really some good leadership teams. And so it really takes the good leadership team kind of trumps good ideas, if I could say that. So you're seeing where a lot of people are coming in and making investments, and now the investments. This is the fun part about it, Nick, is they start coming upstream more. So we need to really be focused on the early stage money, but different rounds are coming in where you're getting $80 million. You're getting, like Count got that a couple of years ago.
Cradle Point. Yeah.
Then you get the purchase of the $340 million where you saw Matt last night from T-Sheets. You see the money that took in at Cradle Points was awesome. Mm-hmm. You have the money, we don't know for how much it came for Clearwater and also for truckstop.com, mm-hmm. But it's big. But that starts showing the scope of the whole investment community in our state has become much broader.
I've heard a very similar perspective, which is that there's not enough interesting ideas going on. Let me tell you, this week proved that wrong. We had a bunch of amazing founders come down and pitch in 2 different pitch competitions, which if you can have 2, that means there's plenty of good ideas. So, kind of talking about early stage companies, I'd really like to hear from Ryan about kind of all that the venture college is doing. I luckily sit on your board of advisors, so I kind of know, but you guys have really gone through some big changes in this last year to engage, especially students in early stage. So, I really want to hear more about how that's working out. And you're a little early to have much deal flow to project forward, but I know you're getting, lots of these companies are getting rounds.
Yeah, and that's really not our objective at Venture College, at least our key metric. I think for 4 years, so Venture College is part of the College of Innovation and Design at Boise State. We have our campus just right around the corner on Capitol and Front. Really our mission is to support entrepreneurship all throughout Idaho. And so for 4 years, our Venture College was all about supporting student startups. So they could house their startup at Venture College and we'd support them and give classes, et cetera. Well, we have 4 years worth of data that says there's not a lot of student startups that are advancing. They have good ideas, but they also have midterms, and it's really hard to balance both. So instead of trying to, climb the hill and keep pushing hard on that, we actually flipped an internship model. So we found that there's a lot of students that want to participate in startups throughout Boise and even small businesses. So what we've done is we've paired them with businesses, but not traditionally through like the normal internship where a student goes and works at the business. Because we found students don't have a lot of time and commitment for full-time internships. And we also know that small businesses or startups a lot of times don't have like a full-time role for an intern. Like they need them for a couple weeks and then like they're done. But if like traditional internships, you kind of have to stay there for the whole semester. So what we do is we work as an intermediary. We go to startups and say, give us a project. Like give us the deliverables, tell us what you need. And then we as Venture College recruit students to work on those projects, and we work as like quality assurance. But it's really hands-on education. So we're teaching them best practices, we're teaching them new software tools. And so from a business perspective, you're getting a delivered product that has been like screened by us at a very, very low cost. But you don't have the commitment, and you don't have to pay them a lot, and you don't have the commitment of like keeping them on for the semester. So that's really, to give you perspective, we did a pilot over the summer. We launched in the fall. Within a month, we had 80 Boise State students sign up. We get daily signups every day. And at the same time, we're getting more and more business deals coming in. And it ranges everything from social media to research to building web projects. So it's across the board, but it's working. It's pretty fun to be a part of.
Well, it's also addressing another concern that I think our ecosystem generally has, which is talent pipeline. I think that's one of the big things that Boise Startup Week has been trying to address. And the programs are consistently getting better across the board. Obviously, the apprenticeship program with ITC is another one that's very helpful. I know Trailhead's going to be looking at the apprenticeship program as well. And so and then Coding Dojo. I'm stealing your lines, Tiam. I'm so sorry.
So no questions for me?
Yeah, you can just, no. And I know all of us are trying to figure out how you solve that problem. And luckily, with Startup Week, we're seeing amazing statistics on all the students that we bus in. How many of them are getting hired and staying here? Outside of just the Boise State students who are already here. And so, a lot of these things, they're starting to click, they're starting to work. So with that in mind, kind of talent pipeline, and since I stole Tiam's lines, I'll let Tiam kind of talk about that next. Can you talk about Coding Dojo specifically?
Yeah, I'd like to point out one thing about the apprenticeship program that I think is really exciting. I've hosted a number of interns myself in the past and had some firsthand pain points in managing them. And what the Venture College is doing is they're taking that stinger out for companies, and they actually are managing the intern to a scope, and the intern also works out of the Venture College if needed. So I think that's a pretty innovative approach to making apprenticeships or internships, I should say, lucrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But regarding our partnership with Coding Dojo, it's something I'm really excited about. It's Trailhead's way of making an impact on workforce development right here in Idaho. We have a pending relationship with them. They are going to teach their first class on December 10th out of Trailhead North in the Learning Center. And it's a hands-on, very intense, compressed boot camp with a pretty unique angle to it. So what they specialize in is not just teaching people how to code. Their value proposition is also to place them as apprentices in local companies. And one key partnership they struck is with the Idaho Department of Labor, who will subsidize these apprentices' salaries in order to make it work. It's lucrative for the employer to bring someone on. It's a good proposition for the graduate who just graduated from Coding Dojo to get some hands-on experience. And meanwhile, we're building talent right here in Boise. And I believe Chris from Coding Dojo is actually here tonight. So.
Raise your hand. There you go. How many of you came up this week, just out of curiosity, and checked out Boise Startup Week? Five team members from Coding Dojos. Very excited to have you here. Thanks.
They were pretty late to the table as a sponsor, and they still hosted 3 workshops. They pulled it off, had one personal emergency, got another guy on the plane, pulled through. So preemptively welcome to Boise.
Yeah, preemptively welcome to Boise. So I'm sure many of you know that I've been really, really passionate about VR as kind of a technology platform. And I'll tell you, I went and saw Ryan DeLuca speak probably before they finished coming up with the name Black Box. And he was talking about being really excited about VR. And I was like, man, why am I not paying attention? And it wasn't too long after that the IVRC was launched. I also was friends with Jay Sines, right? So that's another one. And I think the evolution of this organization and its kind of its staying power here is a really, really interesting story that's helping build the ecosystem. And what I love about it is it's taking something that's pretty targeted in technology and figuring out ways to build interest and engagement that's contributing to the entire ecosystem. And so, Annie, maybe you could just start by giving us a kind of a synopsis of the total mission.
So the Idaho Virtual Reality Council is a nonprofit, and our whole goal is to bring together the people, technologies, and companies to create a thriving AR/VR industry in Idaho. So we really feel like this technology is the next tech wave that is going to change the way we work, the way we learn, et cetera. So we want to make sure that Idaho has a piece of that when that technology hits. As you said, it is emerging, and we want to make sure that Idaho is prepared. So I'll give you a little bit of the backstory of how the organization was founded. So as you mentioned, Ryan DeLuca, who some of you may know from bodybuilding.com, started a company called Black Box VR with Preston Lewis. So two co-founders had an idea, wanted to change an industry through this technology. And when they did that, they said, there's other things that we need to do here. We had problems when we were at bodybuilding.com and the internet was happening in 1999. You couldn't hire enough people. No matter how many job listings you had out there, the technology was new. The internet was new. How are we going to fix that? And that's when they said, we need to build the ecosystem. We need to create an organization that focuses on the community and helps build that groundswell. So a lot of what we do, so that's what the Idaho Virtual Reality Council does. So a lot of what we do, especially right now, because it's not like everybody has a VR headset in their home, a lot of what we do is getting out there and showing people the technology and the capability. Our thought is, if we can help accelerate adoption, that is just going to further us along here in Idaho. If I can go out there and show an organization how using this technology can truly return, give them a better ROI, save money, we're going to be better off. So as we're out there showing people the technology, we're also making connections. And when we show people the capability that the tech has, we want to then turn them somewhere that they can go, either an organization here locally to get those services, or a developer, et cetera, who's capable of that. One example that you're referencing is the STEM Action Center came to us and said, this technology is really interesting. It gets people excited. How do we do something? And I said, what? We should talk to Blocksmith. Their software, their maker software, their builder software, is super cool. I think it could be really applicable to a program in schools. And so we got them together, and they launched a program that they test piloted this year and brought VR creation to 7 rural schools in Idaho. So they're really targeting rural schools. And the response was amazing. These students and teachers got really excited, and the kids are building something. They're able to build a 3D environment, go in, look at it, and it's pretty quick. They get that instant gratification, and it was very successful, and they're going to do more of that this year. So that's one example. I want to give another example too. I want to keep going. So another thing is, I mentioned when I go to industries and say, hey, how are you guys using this tech? Here's how maybe other big markets might be doing it, and we should be doing it here too. When Black Box was looking at building their flagship location in San Francisco, they needed architects, et cetera, and there was conversation happening. We happened to sit in the same office about an architect, so they were looking at a few firms in California. And somebody said, isn't there a firm that's been coming to IVRC meetings? I said, yeah, that's CSHQA. You need to talk to them. So they actually got on the phone that day, made the connection, CSHQA bid the job, and they won. So, I thought that was super cool, because that business stayed in Idaho because of the IVRC connection.
All right, so we've now talked to every one of our panelists so far. I was hoping you would all have questions right now. Here we go.
So for Jay, we had a lot more money coming in to the state for startups and funding and all that kind of stuff. What percentage of that money was actually from within the state? So it was like Idaho investors and VCs and so on, and how much was from out of state?
Yeah, that's a good question. So our big thing is have represented about 120,000 employees that work for technology associated companies here. But this capital thing is just, it's an amazing Rubik's Cube. The question that you're asking is probably the biggest one. At our Hall of Fame event, we had Steve Young come up from AGGC out of the Silicon Valley area, right? So this is one that's going to go a little bit further upstream. They came in here 2 years ago and met with the principals at Clearwater Analytics to help buy that company, basically. They couldn't make the deal work because it got too hot. But the idea that we had is that he's there and he wants to get in here and make more investments in this area. So this is now playing into the answer to the question. The second one is yesterday Heidi and I had the chance to be able to meet with a company that's out of LA. And they want to invest in Idaho companies, and he has contacts, and he has his parents spend a lot of time up in Ketchum. So it's great. So what we're finding is that there's a lot of outside capitalists investing in Idaho, much more. The deals that are happening in Idaho are ones that are more because I'm a friend or I know it, or I knew Bob Locken, so I wanted to invite Vynyl West in White Cloud. So what's really going to happen is this. We're meeting soon. It's on Halloween, sorry. And we're meeting with a ghoulish person. His name is George Mulhern. And George, there is amazing stuff going on at Cradle Point, you guys. This is another one. I want to talk about disruptive at some point when I have a chance. But what's going to happen here is that we're going to talk about a fund that's going to be Idaho raised and Idaho deployed and Idaho managed, so that we can sit there and invest in Idaho things. And then with this fund, we really need to focus right now a little bit more on earlier stage, because we're finding a lot of latter stage stuff that we can come up or mid or later, and that's what's happening. But the early stage is it. So watch for that, and I think that there's going to be a lot of focus that we have from our Capital Connects team that's going to be really focused on Idaho money.
For a long time, we had to prove deal flow, and outside money was some easier low-hanging fruit to start, at least on some of these bigger deals that were going on. But I think the deal flow is starting to be proven. And so that's where this change, I think, is starting to take a shift where, I could name them all, but we had multiple VCs here this week going to our pitch competitions, talking with investors. Our winner of the pitch competition last year got funded almost immediately afterwards. So, and that was, I think the Boise Angel Alliance is on his cap table. So it's happening.
But this is the deal that's going on. When we met yesterday with Kane Anderson, they have on their radar about 20 companies that are coming in here. Now, here's the thing that's going on. You're going to have about $5 to $10 million in revenues, right? So a lot of early stage companies don't have that much revenue right now. So our objective has to be that we have to find more access to capital and also get people in a lot better position where they're going to come up in front of somebody and they're going to find a partner as opposed to a VC company. That's firm. You talk to Steve Young about what he wants? He wants a partner. And he wants somebody that can open up supply chain routes and other type of things to help them be more successful. Similar to what CVC Capital Partners did at Count, and that's a great story for you at some point.
So I had a second question for the guy whose name I can't remember, the venture college. So the question I had was for the interns. Is there some sort of a program in place with some sort of contracts when they go out to these companies? Because my understanding is that if the undergraduate invents something, he owns it unless there's a contract in place. So how do you handle that?
Boise State lawyers are handling it. If we pair a student with a company, the rights go to the company, just as if you were to hire someone through Upwork or another kind of outsourcing site. And I was actually going to piggyback off of what you're talking about. I too see the need of early seed stage funding. I think the reality is there's not a lot. I think we're a temporary solution to that with our program, because if you think about it, a lot of times you're raising capital to hire people to do things to advance your company. And what we're saying is you don't need the capital, you just need to come to, at least at a certain stage of your business, just come to venture college, we'll pair you with students and we'll get some of that workforce out. So if we're talking like early seed stage, that's where we think we can help fill a gap, because it's not so money dependent, but they still need the help.
I had another question here.
I knew that.
When it comes to the students that are coming through venture college from Boise State, yes, I get the value of, those kind of social media, the kind of doing some development work, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm looking to do with my company is eventually be able to train people to kind of take a wing of what I have, what we're building. So would it be possible also to do that, kind of have those students, or are there those kind of students that are looking for those higher level opportunities to learn the structure of a company, how things work, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, totally. So if you think of internships, we think we're on the lower entry level, but we are very transparent to students that they need to advance. So we're working with students that have no resume experience or little resume experience related to the job that they want to do. So I met with a sophomore that's in marketing yesterday that all she had on her resume was a barista, right? So we give her social media projects for 2 or 3 companies, and now all of a sudden on LinkedIn, she's associated with 2 or 3 companies that she can now put on her resume as well. But to your point, yeah, we want to farm them out. We think it's more like the minor league system that we can either, give to Career Center for regular internships, or if you really like a student, by all means, that's our goal. We want to make those. We don't think students are prepared for that yet, and so we take some of that pain point of managing and prepping those students with best practices. Yeah, the girl I talked to yesterday had never heard of Trello, had never used any software platforms, and had never used Hootsuite, had never even heard of Hootsuite. I don't know how you're in marketing and never heard of Hootsuite by the time you're a sophomore, but that's the reality of where these students are at. So we're trying to help manage that, because we just find if you're managing it yourself, you have to really slow down your processes. I've hired many interns myself, and we view the education piece should be on us, not on you guys as the business owners. It's kind of flipped right now, so we want to take that education back and take some of that pain back.
We have David Moore that's here. You got to stand up. Yeah, stand up, David. That's a good idea. So David's been working on a lot of apprentice programs too, similar to what Tiam was talking about with Boise CodeWorks and a lot of other applications we have in the area. And we also have another one that's going to be around advanced manufacturing. So if you are interested in also making a product, so the 2 areas we always categorize them in, Nick, would be service, software as a service, SaaS, all that kind of stuff, right? And then we've got making products. If you're in that side too, we have some things that we can do to assist you on that. So just let us know.
Yeah. No, again, I mean, most of these services, again, are free, and they're here for the public. I mean, I've taken advantage of many of them myself, and these things didn't exist even 6 years ago, right? I just wrote Boise off 6 years ago, and now I'm realizing that was crazy. That was crazy.
As a business owner, it's very isolating. You're very head down. You're working 10, 12 hours a day, and it's hard to find the resources, the talent, or even just people who can empathize with the journey that you're on. And I've heard this echoed a lot. Something that Boise is not winning at yet, I think we may get there, is ways to connect all of the pieces. It seems like we're still a very fragmented community, whether it's ITC in the corner or, Idaho Virtual Reality over here. I mean, it does seem like there's a missing through line, and I feel like Boise Startup Week and Trailhead are pieces to that. But I'm curious from the whole panel, maybe what you've observed in other communities, or maybe some innovative ideas that have come forward on how we think we can better tie all of this together so that, Simply Eloped or Vynyl knows that this venture college program even exists. This is the first time I've even heard about it, and so I feel like there's got to be better ways that we can connect with each other, and I'm just curious to know what the panel's thoughts on that are.
But no, let's just take the bull by the horn. I think we, as the ecosystem, we operate on a continuum. In my mind, that's the ecosystem, and there's different areas within that continuum that Trailhead covers versus the venture college versus ITC. And I personally think that Trailhead is the conduit of this ecosystem. If you think of the venture college as a feeder program into Trailhead, early stage companies, whether that's seed founding or maybe Series A, like you have with Love Every, we then pass those companies on to other players in the ecosystem. And so I'm really agnostic when it comes to being the conduit. It's not being self-centered as Trailhead is the center of the ecosystem. We are one player, and we tend to be on the on the forefront. The companies in their early stage come to us, and it's a really great place to start and get referred to anyone else on the ecosystem.
So I would agree with that. that it does feel sometimes really siloed. What I would say right now is sitting up here, it feels like we are communicating better than we have since I've started at the IVRC. It feels like we're collaborating more. We are talking, Jay and I are talking about stuff that we're doing. We're promoting their events. They're promoting our events. We're figuring out ways that we can integrate better with Trailhead. I probably need to talk to you. So it feels like we're headed in the right direction, I think.
For us, one way we're trying to solve it is actually doing events together, but knowing our space. So, we're doing two things with Trailhead. Starting in November, Trailhead, Venture College, and the Boise Angel Alliance paired up for a pitch night where normally, like for the Boise Angels, when you pitch for money, it's really closed door. There's like 8 people in a room for a screening committee. The 3 of us came together and flipped that and said, let's make it a public event. Like, how cool would it be to see people pitching for $50,000, $100,000? We're doing that in November. And so Venture College is having a piece in that. We're actually going to have, as part of what was it, edutainment? We're going to have a quick 4 to 5 student pitch off as well, as giving students a chance to pitch. So we have value, right? We represent students, but then Trailhead hosts it and the Angels provide the main event. That's the best way to me, is figuring out, know your space and then work together to offer something unique.
All right, so here's the deal that goes on. How many people here have extra time? All right, so I'm going to tell you something's going on here. Please listen to this, and I totally agree that you need to know the lane. Like, Idaho Technology Council is not an economic development engine, all right, like BVIP or somebody like that. But we work closely with them. We are not an incubator or somebody that kind of collects areas like what you two are here, Tiam, right? We're not what Venture College does. So it's important for us to all work together. But listen to this part about what I'm going to say. We've worked for 10 years. One of the big things we tried to do is we tried to do these meetups. We did them at places we did them at Count. Everybody showed up. It was crazy. We did it a couple other places, and we only got 3 people to show up. And we did it for about 8 months, and I just realized, you guys, it was immensely hard, especially when you only saw 3 people show up, right? But we thought that, so we started thinking about this. So then we started saying, okay, what's the right way to be able to make it so people come together? Then it became very apparent. How many people went to the water cooler years ago? Okay, water cooler always had people who would come at the front end, but you never had the big entrepreneurs there as much. You might have somebody come speak to you, like Brad Feld would come in from Colorado and stuff like that, but you never had the main ones always come on a consistent basis, so there was always a disconnect there. So let me tell you what the solution, I think we found it. We have a tech to market committee, but with that committee, what do we do with it? It's called a confluence. So you need to be able to get around people that are doing similar things to what you do, and then you come together, and it might be in different vertical, but you can all see the horizontal side of it come together. So you can say, okay, I do things in wireless, or I do things to be able to manage water better, or I do things, Internet of Things that's a little bit more connected. So then what we can do is we're going to get some of the people in that same group together and start growing a community around that. And then we also do things around, let's say I'm in project management. We have a group that gets together and talks about project management now. And they know, because they're the ones that are responsible for how do you get the product to the market and the profitability and the line items around that. And the last item would be is you just got to get things, because the fact of it is this: the only success that we all have anywhere is if you make a product and or a service and you're profitable and you make money. Yep. Life is wonderful. It's a capitalist society. That's what we live in. But if you sit there and you're sitting there and you're trying to find your time in the most economical way of your time, if it doesn't add to that at the end of the day, it's going to be hard, because I've got a family, I've got a dog I got to go walk. Okay, but I got a lot of things going on, right? I've got a ton of things that I need to do in my life, and you all do too. And so you have to find a way to optimize it. And the way you're going to do it is by these confluence, because you're going to have intersections. So we've got some that are starting up right now. Some of them are going to be in agricultural, some are going to be other areas. And then we'll find some ways to be able to make the connection. Because I'm going to tell you, I've wasted, not wasted, let me make it. I've learned. Thank you very much, Nick. I've learned that the community that we're in right now is fast, furious. Things are changing with technologies. and we have to be nimble, and the only way you can do that is by doing that. So we've got to find the right way. Like, I'm just going to ask, what's that? Fail fast.
There you
I
go.
like it.
There you go.
What would you say that your industry vertical would be? Okay, but tell me, that's got to, let's say I know it's elopement, a wedding. E-commerce. Okay, so
There you
this is
go.
where we go. Thank you very much.
So we had another question here.
Yeah, I'm this is probably mostly for Jay, but in terms of trying to increase the availability of capital in the community for startups, I have some involvement with the Boise Angel Alliance, and so I know the challenges of trying to find individual investors and that's probably because we don't make it as well known as we could about what the opportunities are. But the other thing that seems to be happening is that there's very little success in getting any institutional capital or corporate capital in that stream, where I think Silicon Valley and other places tend to have a little bit more of that. Is there any discussion with any of the large foundations in the community that are investing capital to see if they would be interested in investing some of that in startups?
Yeah, you have a lot of people have talked about this over the last 10 years, ever since the financial collapse and how we can really get this. This is the next meeting that we're having. It's going to be a very critical one. George Mulhern knows how to do this when he worked at Highway 12, and then he, left to be able to scale Cradle Point. Let me tell you about what I think is really the key. What the key is if you learn this, these are the three keys really quick. You have to learn who's responsible, and then you also have to take responsibility on that, and then you have to know the truth. So you know that when you have a company, the right way to go, so you're not sitting there trying to get something started when you know somebody's sitting there saying, "Oh, that's a fantastic idea," but nobody's really telling you that the idea really stinks. We need to be honest with each other about what happens. The other part that we need to do with this is, as you start going out and you start looking for things, you have to find out what's disruptive in this space. So right now, if you take a look at each individual idea that you might have, or I've helped start and grow over 6 companies, and I know that a lot of times we made some very, I'm looking back at it and I'm going, how do we make that decision? Because it wasn't very smart. But sometimes it's like the idea of failing, you have to do it quickly and fast. The last part about this is this. If you find a disruptive technology or something that's related to it, the way you measure that is when you're able to get customers and how easy that's able to come. And if somebody sits there and really struggles a lot to be able to make revenues because you can't get the customer, you got to sit there and identify, is the right technology? Do I have the right marketing plan? Do I have all those? But if it's really, that's how you measure it, if I can do it. And then it will come easy, because there are companies here. George Mulhern's company right now is one of the it's going to be amazing, you guys. They have been identified as one of the top disruptive technologies because Verizon is rolling out their next 5G fixed wireless assets, and they've announced that Cradle Point is their partner in doing that on the equipment side. So keep an eye on what's happening at Cradle Point, because it's going to explode right now as they get 5G, and they're going to be rolling it out into like 5 different cities: Houston, LA, Sacramento, and someplace back east. So,
Well, so to kind of answer your question another way too, Jay kind of spoke to this, but I can't remember who said this to me in passing at one point, but I will never forget it. They said, customers are the new seed round. And I was like, duh, wow, okay. And it's true though, because if you can go and prove that you have people who are willing to actually give you money for the thing that you're thinking about or building, even if the thing isn't built yet, you can test this without actually having a product. You will find investment. You will find investment. You'll find people. Any one of these people up on stage can help connect you, if that part is true. If that part is true.
It's worth noting, Albertsons, for example, just put up $50 million in partnership with a VC firm, and they're going to invest that money into startups that make products and services that could be leveraged for retail. On the other hand, you have Micron, who put up $600 million for acquisitions and VC investment into AI. So it is happening. It's just we don't talk about it much. And I think this is an opportunity to be loud about those commitments.
It is. The idea just is how much it comes into Idaho companies, right? So this is really the wonderful thing.
I'd like to talk about that for a second. the term outside money, right? So I think, you know, on the one hand, there's risk with taking outside money, because chances are once outside money gets into Idaho, that company is likely going to move, okay? So that's one risk. The other risk is maybe not so much of a risk, but the drawback is that money coming in from outside of Idaho, those returns are going back out. But in my mind, if we are able to show some early wins with outside money, get a momentum going, get our own investors interested and aware of what they could do right here in their backyard, I'm agnostic. I'm not, as Trailhead, I wouldn't necessarily discriminate and say outside money, inside money. Sure, I would rather have money come from right here because it's likely going to stay here and then reinvest in the ecosystem. But I think to get there as a jump start, as an ignition, I'm open to outside money. So if you're from outside Idaho, don't discriminate, bring your money, we'll pair you up with some good investments.
And it proves deal flow, right? That, which is the point, that there's enough investable companies here. I mean, I think some of our investors in our backyard, like they enjoy their house in Sun Valley, but they haven't decided to pay attention yet. And so if you actually have deal flow to prove, that changes the equation.
And that's on us. You know, I think the deal flow report raises awareness. Boise Startup Week raises awareness. We need to be loud. We need to celebrate our wins and work together.
Another question, I think here.
You know, I've been here for 9 years, came from Los Angeles, and I've been to a lot of different startup coffees and a lot of different efforts for the community to come together. And one of the things that I've always noticed on the small and medium business side is that there's no real good collective voice that trumpets what some of those smaller wins are to other communities. Whether that's larger technology markets like Los Angeles or San Francisco, or even places like Austin and Denver, et cetera. So, you know, Janessa makes great remarks about, you know, we have issues with trying to get everybody connected here locally, but also how do we take that to the next level for the small and medium-sized businesses and get them greater awareness with outside markets? Because as a smaller, medium-sized business owner, a lot of times that's what you're looking for, is that extra traction to either bring you revenue or get you noticed by somebody else. And we can talk about deal flow, and at a certain point, there are a lot of companies that are ready for that discussion. But there's a tremendous amount of other companies that are just getting started who need that extra vision that makes it outside of this market. And as community organizations, what can we do to help raise that collective kind of trumpet?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you and I counted about 6 outside VC firms being represented throughout Boise Startup Week. So I think it's happening. So there is a lot of momentum in Boise. Boise's getting attention in magazines nationwide, getting ranked #1. You know, someone told me that there's VC vultures circling over Boise, looking to snatch up the next opportunity. I said, well, let's invite them in and feast together. But to answer your question, I think at the end of the day, Jim, we need to take those talks and coffee shop interactions and make them actionable. And that's, again, on us, all of us here, as a community, not Trailhead as the conduit or as a center, to take action. It's going to take commitment. And, you know, back to what Jay said, I think we ought to hold each other accountable to take action quickly, because if we don't, someone else will do it on our behalf, and that would be lost opportunity for us.
And sometimes I think that we forget that if you really look at the size of our market, I mean, we really are a tertiary market on the cusp of being a secondary market, and most of us believe we're a primary market. And so we're right there in that transition where we are now getting to be loud, right? And we're starting that point. I think Boise Startup Week has, again, done a pretty good job of trying to be loud and try to make sure that all of the voices here have an opportunity to be loud. And it's working. I mean, again, we're having these funds come in. We're having people, there's great connections. We're having companies through the pitch competition get funded. I mean, it's starting to work.
I think it is happening. Like, there's some relationships that I can say that I know the IVRC has helped to make, where you aren't necessarily talking about funding, but we have examples of people that have been ready to launch a VR experience on the Steam store, and we've been able to connect them with the right people to get feedback, to get better promotion once it's on there. So we do feel like that is our role, and we're trying to continuously do more of that.
Idaho in the 90s was hot. The economy's hot, but it wasn't because we had all these startups. It's because the startups from Micron and HP coming here were hot. we actually didn't have a lot of really going on. But then in the 2000s, we had a lot of things starting coming in, but we didn't have really good startups in the 90s. So the 2000s, the expansion that we had there was because real estate and all this other stuff went really sky high. We have had so much success in the marketplace that had in that 2000 range, like where you had Count, Clearwater, Cradle Point. I mean, the list is long there, T-Sheets, all these long. Now is the time where Idaho can get recognized and Boise can get recognized because we have the success. We have a lot of VCs. We've had like Summit Partners investing in 3 different companies here. We've had the exits that's come in. This is the time where the market's going to really start taking off and we can really take advantage of that.
Epic and Aptitex, yeah.
Yes, Epic Aptitex, great story.
Has there been any talks about using the investor visa program, EB-5 in Idaho? I mean, Idaho's largely rural and could take advantage of something like that on the capital side. And then the workforce pipeline question had to do with how do you, I guess, how am I gonna ask this? How do you see like immigration playing into the workforce with student visas and just what's the perspective at Boise State on that?
Really quickly, the idea that, first of all, EB-5, very good program that's made to be able to allow foreign investors to come in and they basically have visas and an opportunity to come to the United States. China is intended for that. It's really an interesting program, but you really get the secondary tier of the people in China really looking at it. I've had some companies here that's been looking at doing some of those. They've had some investments. There has been some success. So I think it can work. It's a little bit more challenging than what we thought it would have been 10 years ago, in that program. So I still think it's an opportunity to look at those and find really niche parts in that. The other part is when we had the Develop Idaho, and we had the person that was running Silicon Valley joint venture, he said that 70% of the software engineers that are now located in Silicon Valley are from where? Anybody? India. So they're all coming from 70%. You know what they're making right now? It's $260,000 on the average there. It's crazy, right? So the idea that we have to find talent, we have to get it, we have to bring it from wherever we can find it, and to be able to bring those H-1B visas and everything like that is very important for us to be able to do that. But what's more important, I'm going to say this part, is to be able to get computer science, and this is something we have. We have a K through 20 computing technology working group, and its primary purpose is to get computer science and computing technology in K through 12. Because the more that we do that, the more that we're going to have that will be it, and we don't have to worry so much about importing talent.
Seems like there was other questions, so I'll keep this really quick. Our program, as far as the internship goes, is really new, and so we really haven't explored a lot into like the immigration factors. I think it'll come along. We're just not quite there yet that it's like been on the forefront of our minds.
Just to your point, I myself came to the US on an F1 student visa, went to Boise State. My parents came here on H-1B1. Both are being curbed, as you probably know, and I'm here. So there's an OTP program after you graduate school on an F1. You get to work here for a year. And, I used to work at Vasso. There is a big J1 visa program in hotels and vacation rentals to bring in students. That is probably not a sustainable approach. And I also have seen some of what Jay was talking about, basically investors buying their visas through investments. But again, I'm agnostic and I'm not going to discriminate if someone wants to invest into our companies.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. If I can leave you on one note, I think our trajectory is very, very positive. I think that we are all working together and trying to make our ecosystem move in the right way. And I'm really, really excited about where we're going. So thank you for coming out to Boise Startup Week. And